Hi, I'm Rui Pereira da Costa, organizer of the Endomasters 2015. From Germany, directly from the city where Mercedes and Porsches are made, let me present you Oscar Von Stetten. It is a great pleasure to have Oscar's participation in this congress. He is an awesome clinician and an expert on the use of microscope in endodontics and especially on microscope photography. You'll be able to see some beautiful images in this lecture that will be all about a very innovative instrumentation system, still unknown to many, the self-adjusting files. I'm sure you'll enjoy.
Welcome to the Endomasters 2015 event. Rui at this place, thank you very much for this unique opportunity. My name is Oscar Von Stetten. I'm from Germany. I'm living in Stuttgart, the town where Porsche and Mercedes is produced. And both brands sell a lot of emotions. And endodontics is always about passion and emotions. My topic today will be a little lecture about the SAF file, self-adjusting file. And this is also something that generates emotions, like, for example, which file system do you use? And my primary topic will be today, is it a toy or is it much more an indispensable tool in root canal treatments? For me, as a heavy user of the SAF file since the beginning of introduction into the market in 2011, for me it's not only a new file, it's a complete new paradigm shift, because this instrument is the first real file we use in endodontics. All other instruments on the market are cutting instruments, so we are producing debris, whereas the SAF, due to the oscillating movement, really grinders the canal in its whole circumference. This will be not a marketing lecture. For this purposes you have to book a hands-on course or something else. I just want to enlighten the SAF and the use of SAF clinically out of the point of view of a clinician, what is really interesting. So let's take a look first for the evidence, and this one is from the 10th of January 2015, just a PubMed search, and we have 79 papers dealing with the SAF, which is a lot, a lot, and it's one of the best investigated systems and means of papers, and across these papers only a handful of case reports are included, so there is good literature available. During the introduction phase of the SAF into the market, there was a case series by Tzvi Metzger, which is the scientific counselor of Radiant Nova, Israel, and all the properties of the SAF were described. It was published in the Joey, and was very, very interesting because it raised up a lot of discussions. If there are any details you want to know, get the 3 articles and you get a very good introduction, a very brief introduction into the SAF system. Now we want to take a little look into the details of the SAF file. The SAF file looks basically like a mesh from coronary surgery, like a stent. Surface is rough, and this is the most important detail because it explains the action SAF is producing in the canal. And this is the most detailed look what we have, and it explains the surface of the SAF perfectly. It's rough to a controlled depth, and this is how the SAF in the canal works. I only compare it with a grinder, it's the same action, and you see it really does its work in the canal. What we are looking at is a canal of our upper incisor. Clinically, in a patient's case, it was very, very big canal, about ISO 60, and the apical. What we are looking at is the apical part, and you see the working marks from the SAF in there, so there's really action happening. The second interesting part and important part for the work of the SAF is the file is hollow and it can be compressed, and so a perfect adaptation to the existing root canal anatomy and not created by our round files rotating in a mostly oval shape is happening, and everyone of us knows this. If you look, for example, at a lower canine or lower incisor, we all know these are oval shaped flat canals, but we only see the bacolingual direction in the radiograph, so it always appears very, very neat, mechanized and debrided. But if we look in the mesiodistal direction, we know exactly our round files cannot reach every part of this canal. And what we see here is a lower incisor with an inserted SAF file, and we see it adapts perfectly to the shape of the canal. Another thing is, just to show, this is a SAF 2 mm. It can be squeezed. It can be also twisted. This file was twisted 3 times and it did not break. The mesh looks and is quite stable. There are some clinical situations where the mesh is not so stable enough, but this is not a fault of the file itself, but to blame on the anatomy we find. For example, in the isthmus area of an upper molar or even premolars, it can be sometimes very pesky. As we see here, this is the same file which was twisted and which was squeezed, and of course there is a deformation because this is a lot of stress for the file, and we all know nitride can be pre-bended, even with the super elastic properties, but this is another story. In the meantime, Radiant has a lot of possibilities to adapt the files. It has an own endo station. Basically, this is a programmable endomotor. It is possible to program it in every aspect. You can program the torque, you can program a reciprocating movement with all angles needed and everything, and it has a special featured program for the SAF itself. It has an irrigation bottle with a peristaltic pump inserted there for the continuous flow of irrigation in the SAF file. So if you do not have any distinct motor yet, you should take a closer look on this piece. It's very neat, it's very nice. You can use every file system you want with it, including the SAF, which is good for the ergonomics in your office because you don't have so many different motors and systems standing around there. I use personally since 4 years this Vatea irrigation unit. It's just a peristaltic pump which pumps me the irrigation solution through the SAF. It has a built-in timer, which is very neat because you need to use the SAF 4 minutes per canal, and if you don't have a timer you lose time, and believe me, 4 minutes can be very, very long. There are different possibilities to attach the LDT3 head, which translates the rotation movement from the motor into the oscillating movement which SAF needs. In the first beginning there was only one head and only one adaptation solution, and meanwhile Radiant created many possibilities, so literally every motor and every handpiece is adaptable for it. And this is very nice because you can use your equipment, you don't need new equipment, something else. The SAF file also rotates a little bit, and this is very, very important point because we come later on it in this lecture why the rotation is very important. There is a clutch included into the head set to a very low torque value, and when the file is not engaged in the canal wall, it can rotate freely, and this is important. And as soon as it engages the canal wall, the rotation stops immediately. The key points: we have a mesh-like structure, it's compressible, we have a rough surface like sandpaper, we have an oscillating movement with 0.4 millimeters up and down, and we have a passive irrigation. So these are our key features I like a lot, and I liked it a lot in 2011 when the system was presented the first time to us. And the term passive irrigation is meant really as passive irrigation because the pump does not produce any pressure for the irrigation solutions, but it drops drop by drop through the hollow structure of the file, and due to the surface tension of the sodium hypochlorite, it runs down to the apex of the file and exits there. It's amazing, you have to see it yourself. I could present different videos of it, but something, if you experience it yourself, you will understand. So we go a little bit into the studies published by Metzger in 2010. Canal wall free of debris. This is always interesting for us. Even there is a philosophical discussion ongoing. Do we need removal of debris, or do we need to remove the smear layer? But this is a very good indicator for the cleaning action of the file system, or for ultrasonics irrigation, or for the irrigation device itself. And we take a look on rotary, coronal third, 61%, wall free of debris, and the middle third 60%, apical third 39%. One thing to explain, I don't care about the coronal and middle third, because there my ultrasonics will act enough to clean me up the walls. But in the apical third, for my eyes, the crucial part of the root canal and vital for the outcome success of the root canal treatment, I cannot reach in many cases with my ultrasonics in a predictable way. Why? Because we have a multiplanar curvature of the teeth, so even there is no real evidence available yet, it's my belief that if my ultrasonic file or my ultrasonic irrigation device binds to the wall, the action of the ultrasonics will stop. There are some studies from Luc van der Sluis, which are very interesting. They are also pointing in this direction. Now we look at the SAF file, and every third 100%. Now we look at the smear layer. On the smear layer, there is a big difference now. You see coronal third 100%, and the rotary only 37%, and the apical third, the rotaries only reach 25%, whereas the SAF reaches 65%. It cannot reach 100% in the apical third. This is physically and mechanically not possible. If you look at the SAF, it will be explained why this is so, but my common sense tells me 65% is much better than 25%. Please be aware of the fact this was not a judging. It's just a common sense thing. Every one of us knows 65 is better than 25. If it does play a real difference in outcome, we can discuss this a little bit later. I thank Frank Paquet from Zurich for his fantastic pictures. He did micro CT images, pre and post. He took a tooth, scanned it, and worked with the SAF, recording the instructions of Redent. And after this, he scanned the teeth again and overimposed them. And everything what you see in green is not touched area. And if I look at the mesiobuccal system, which is seen on the left side, which is a long ribbon-shaped canal, there is a lot of surface being worked, and only a few points are not really instrumented by the SAF. One limitation of this study is, of course, the resolution of 20 microns, because the software only can detect changes in the canal volume when the change exceeds 20 microns. So perhaps the green areas were touched for 5 microns or 10 microns abrasion, but the software cannot distinguish it and cannot show us and visualize the changes. Another tooth from Frank, that's very interesting also, because you see there is one undercut in the mesiobuccal, and even this undercut was prepared by the SAF. One example from a C-shaped canal, which is also very interesting for us, because I find them really challenging to instrument them mechanically and bring some irrigation solution for disinfection action in there. These are very narrow structures. This example comes from the Radiant Nova website. They own work, and it was done also like Frank Paquet before and after. You see, the C-shaped canal was instrumented by far much more than with our conventional systems and instrumentations. It's possible, of course, you can make it up a little bit with ultrasonics. You can through the isthmus, and you can open it up for enhanced disinfection solutions, penetration. Of course you can do it, but as you see, and you know also, these C-shaped canals are very irregularly formed, and the remaining dentil wall thickness can sometimes be very low. So the use of ultrasonics throughing is dangerous in terms of perforation. One fact as these pictures were published, we all went on immediately and discussed it along, exactly the part we know from different studies from Rikuchi, Sikera, Nair, and many much more, that especially in the apical part, bacterial biofilm and bacterial remnants are standing there. In my eyes, and this is also common sense, I think this the apical part has to be debrided properly to secure an outcome success. And the SAF doesn't do it because the physical properties of the files did not allow and do not allow this kind of preparation in this complicated anatomy. It's quite unfair, because the focus of this study was laid on the C-shaped part of the canal, not on the apical preparation. And the normal tools, this would normally be not a problem. So for me, in terms of the years of experience I gathered with the SAF, it changed from a self-adjusting file, for me in my eyes, for a super additional file, because it's another tool for me to irrigate and disinfect the canal much, much more. Of course, the SAF is capable due to its physical properties as flexible mesh to prepare not touched areas of the canal wall by my rotary files, and it is still capable to prepare undercuts. I will show later on radiographs from clinical cases, which is clearly evident that it goes into very complicated anatomy. I like it a lot, and for me, I'm using a hybrid technique, which is described perfectly by Diogo Guerreira. And for me, the SAF is in the meantime an indispensable tool to get rid of all these shavings. All of our rotary files are cutting instruments, so they're producing shavings, a lot of shavings, and these shavings are pressed into the anatomical irregularities every canal has. A very, very neat study was a hard tissue debris accumulation analysis by high-resolution computer tomography scans. What a title. By Frank Paquet. They took lower molars with a confluent anatomy in the mesials, which is quite usual in this teeth, and prepared it. After the mechanical preparation, an irrigation protocol was applied using ultrasonics, sodium hypochlorite, and EDTA, just to simulate the clinical situation. I find this study very neat. Another study dealing with the same as this one, also by Frank Paquet. They did the same with different configurations, and you see it was a tooth prepared with a protaper, and they looked into the isthmus, and even with ultrasonics and in detail something else, and nothing happened. And they did one study dealing with only SAF preparation, and this was not very surprising, because you see the debris produced and clogged into the isthmus and the recesses and all the anatomy is not as that big as with rotaries. Of course not, because the SAF file does not produce shavings like our conventional rotary instruments, but it produces a sort of powder because it's grinding the canal wall. And in this case, no ultrasonics was used. It is only SAF. So if you use additionally a sonic or ultrasonic device, I am convinced that you get much more out of this debris. And if you see, the recesses and the isthmus is very, very clean. These are original images from the study, not 3D volume rendered, but only the slices, and you see this is a protaper mechanical shaping with a tooth, mandibular molar, mesial root with a two confluence and a big isthmus, and you see pre and post. And what you see in the post is that in the anatomical irregularities, there is something gray inside, and it can be concluded this is debris. Another thing you should notice is that the protaper was not able to hold the original canal anatomy centered, but it left it in direction of the isthmus. Another tooth, very challenging, only SAF, and you see it's clear inside. So much for the literature, for the shaping and debris accumulation. Some key points: the shaping ability of the SAF is noticeably good, yet the apical portion seems to need some deep shaping, which I personally believe it's very important. Much less debris is present in anatomical irregularities. Still, we do not know what does it mean, or will it influence outcome? I don't know. We have cleaner surfaces, and is there any hydrodynamics? It's not evident, but I think if I insert something oscillating with 5,000 oscillations in a minute, with an amplitude of 0.4 millimeters, I will get some hydrodynamic effects in there, because basically it is a sonic irrigation device. One clinical case is a tooth 37. It was pulpitic and it was accessed by the referral. It was referred. Some neat anatomy because two separate POEs are visible in the mesial root. The shape of the lesion, I thought first in a vertical root fracture, but on the cone beam it was not visible, any hints for it. Clinically the tooth was stable and the furcation was also stable, so we decided to treat it. Muscular apical sizes are 0430 and all three canals. SAF, as regarded in instructions from Redent. Filling was vertical compaction with AH plus and GP. This is directly post-op. This is a recall 6 months later. You see the AH plus was resorbed. And this is the 1 year recall. The lesion has almost disappeared. There's still about the distal root something visible. But I know from the cone beam that the lesion was quite big. So it does not surprise me. The only thing which bugs me is that the tooth is still not restored. Another thing, what are we fighting basically, or what are our goals in endodontics? And in my eyes, besides the mechanical prerequisites we need, a caries-free tooth and a restorable tooth and a case assessment correctly done, is we fight those guys. We fight bugs. And we do not fight the planktonic bugs. This one swimming around in the canal in our irrigation solutions and not firmly attached to the canal wall or something else, because, you know, with ultrasonics we have really no problem to get these planktonic bugs out there. Just activate a little bit of ultrasonics, and of course this is unfair because this is 5 centimeters diameters. You know, the ultrasonic energy can really dispose itself. There is no hassle for the file to do the oscillation because it does not bite in the canal or something else. I find these pictures every time quite impressive, but please do not fall into the illusion that the same thing will happen into the canal, because we are talking about a very narrow space. The file is probably binding somewhere there, and there are different effects taking place when using ultrasonics in the canal. Get the publications from Luc van der Sluis. They were very good. Technical terms and explaining all these effects. But everyone is showing such pictures, such movies, and says, hey, ultrasonics is very powerful. Of course, ultrasonics is powerful. But if I look at these parts, you know, these are pictures from a Costerton study. Thanks to David Haramila for providing the pics. And if you see what we deal there, this is a firmly attached, fully matured biofilm with matrix and included erythrocytes. And if I see this picture, I hardly can imagine that my sodium hypochlorite and this little bit of ultrasonics energy I bring down there will dissolve this complex matured biofilms. And they even into the dentinal tubules, and we know it. They can invade the dentinal tubules up to the length of about 2 millimeters. So what are we fighting? We are fighting biofilms. We are not fighting planktonic single bacteria. We are fighting the nemesis, and everything on this world is covered with biofilm. There is nothing what is not covered with biofilm. And of course, this biofilm looks a little bit like this, what we see there. It's a retreatment case of a lower molar. And I removed the gutta-perca, and you see these black strains on the gutta-perca. This is not only biofilm, it's also a rotten sealer. But the other streaming out of this tooth speaks its own language. Or another example, it was an upper incisor in a very young girl. After ortho, she had a trauma in there, and this was the root canal obturation. Not a very good lateral condensation was done. It was heavily infected, and this was what I got out there. You see, the brown mass is not only a rotten sealer, this is also real biofilm. And this is what we are dealing with. And if we look a little bit transitional science for the perio guys still do mechanical removal of the biofilm out of the pocket. They are not pumping any magical irrigation stuff into the pocket and all will heal. No, they remove the calculus, they remove the biofilms, they remove the bacteria and help the body itself to heal. There is one study, clinical antibacterial effectiveness of the self-adjusting file system, very interesting because it's done by people very keen and very deep into the microbiology in the root canal. It was very interesting. They took the SAF, they took hand file instrumentation with passive irrigation, and then you get this table. This was done as a human study. Those were real root canal treated teeth, and they're still inside there. So we look at this and we see not the difference between S1 and S2. We look into the mean procentual reduction from S1 to S2, and this self-adjusting file reduces the bacterial count by 99.9%, and hand night does it by 95.1%. So even it is statistically significant what is going up there, the common sense could tell anyone, I know 99.9 and 95.9, it's not that different. But they did not only look into the bacteria count reduction, also this part of the conclusion is very interesting because they took it and they breed it and they looked from which canals they could culture any bacteria. And if we look there, qualitatively, SAF resulted in significantly more cases with negative PCR results for bacteria in 54.5% of cases, and only 4.5% of the cases of the hand instrumentation were negative. So overall, this 4% difference in bacterial reduction seems to play a major role in the outcome. In the outcome, it means of bacterial cultivation, and not for the clinical outcome situation, because these are two different things, and epidemiological looks and studies on it are very hard to understand and very hard to read, really. My common sense and external evidence is external evidence. Of course, we need some evidence in the daily work with our patients, but my common sense tells me if I have less bacteria and I have less toxic byproducts from this bacteria and something else, it will better heal. And this is one observation we as SAF users see every time, that the cases heal faster. I did not say they heal better, and perhaps if you look at the cases at 1 year, it will make not difference. And the healing of the cases, if you treated a case with SAF or without SAF, I wouldn't go so far to tell if you don't use the SAF, your cases won't heal. No, because we really don't know what is going on down there. But they heal much faster. And this is for me a sign that I remove enough bacteria and bacterial byproducts to enhance the immune reaction from the body and support the body in reconstructing the bone down there, and to get a much more healthier surrounding of the tooth. It is a very philosophical question, and if you read more and more about these bacteria things, the more confused you get, because our current disease models do not explain everything, sadly. But enough philosophical for now. We're going into the prerequisites for the clinical work. And what we really need, what we see here is an upper premolar in a 16 years old girl. It was very deep caries, and we decided to do a deep pulpectomy, and a direct capping was bioceramics. But what you see there also is we have a rubber dam isolation, and without rubber dam, endodontics is not possible. Why not? Because I'm treating all my endodontic cases under the microscope, and I need an assistant with 2 free hands to assist me, to help me in my work, and not to change cotton rolls or suction away saliva. And we all know everything is prepared, everything is etched, and everything is disinfected, everything is ready for filling or for the capping or something else, and the patient swallows once and washes everything full of saliva again. So perhaps in a bad case, 1.5 hours of your work were futile, for nothing, because you spent so a lot of time removing all the caries, removing all the bacteria, disinfecting and doing, and with one little swallowing of the patient, all the work was futile. So rubber dam isolation, perfect rubber dam isolation, we are dealing with sodium hypochlorite, and the SAF uses sodium hypochlorite. And I recommend sodium hypochlorite. This is the main disinfectant, and this is the most effective irrigation solution we have. And if you taste it once, the sodium hypochlorite, if you don't have, I recommend take a little nip of the sodium hypochlorite, and you will instantly understand and know why you don't want your patient to have to swallow this irrigation solution. It tastes awfully. So without a correct rubber dam isolation, there is no way to do an endodontic treatment, in my eyes. Out of quality assurance point of view, of course. And another thing, it's a mindset. You have a rubber dam, you have a clean operating field. I don't any surgeon, general surgeon, who is not draping the patient and isolating his operating field in a perfect way. Sometimes they use 30 sterile sheets to cover up where they cut in. And only we dentists, we think we don't need it, but we need it. Rubber dam is mandatory, because otherwise, these 2 guys, I find it funny because they have a helmet, they have a worn vest, they have tools and something else, and the real funny thing is they have open shoes. So if something falls down, a hammer, a nail, something else, his foot is injured. And sometimes when I look at the case presentations around, it reminds me of this, because cutting edge, using microscope and electronic lens metering and the newest rotary and night eye files. But at the basics, they fail. Using such things without rubber dam isolation is futile in my eyes. And do not forget, we are using the SAF with 5 millimeters per minute, and this is a lot of this. Suction technique is also influencing it. And if you see, the pulp chamber is flooded and it's fleeting. If you look at the suction, it sucks out. And if the assistance goes to nearby, it sucks all the sodium hypochlorite out before it reaches the apex or something else. But please keep this movie into your mind, because 5 millimeter in a minute is a lot of irrigation solution. And if you don't have a perfect isolation, and if you don't have a perfect suction technique from your assistants, you're lost. Definitively. So please do rubber dam. It's not expensive. I showed the movie once again. One key point of this movie is also, when you work with the SAF, the pulp chamber should always be flooded. So please do a pre-endo build-up. And those are basics of our specialty, a reality. And if you're using a scope, please get your assistants a co-observation possibility, a co-observation tube or a video, so she sees exactly where she is suctioning or helping you, or helping or not. One other major point is the excess opening, and I don't want to begin a paradigm discussion about keyhole access or ninja access, or tell it how you want. This is a minuscule access in most cases. So you need room for the SAF, you need room for an apical preparation, for the apical access, like I like to call it. Don't spare a crown. This case was referred by a colleague because this was his opening access, and he told me, yes, he changed already 4 times the calcium hydroxide, and the patient is still in pain. Yes, of course, because with this minuscule access opening, and the colleague is not using a microscope, he could only address 1 canal out of 4. This is not possible. I have to see the anatomy, I have to catch the anatomy, and even with a cone beam pre-operative, you have some room, you need room to manipulate the canals, you need room for the files, and especially for the SAF. So this is out of Castellucci's textbook, one of the best textbooks I ever seen. That's very nice. And the upper picture is the typical, if you get it from referrals, I see it very often, just a peek hole into it, and yes, I put a medicament in it, but the patient is still in pain. You know, I'm neither an advocate of the perfect strain line access, because it means in many teeth that you have to remove the mesial ridge and you are weakening the tooth. It's a level of expertise, you know, and if you gain much more experience, you are going to tend to do smaller accesses, but still fitting your needs of having room. This is my access set. I don't need more. I have a carbide burrs, I have 2 diamond balls. I use the diamond balls only in emergency treatments, when the patient is in heavy pain and my anesthesia is not working properly for everything. And everyone of us knows the situation. You injected already 4 carpals into the patient and he still feels a little bit of pain. So the only remedy to help him is either extract the tooth, but this is not our aim as endodontist. My aim in this case is to get a very fast access to the pulpal, so I can give an intrapulpal anesthesia, which in 100% of the cases helps. Immediately I have 2 tapered burrs, one for molars, one for premolars or incisors, smaller teeth. I have a football shaped diamond in there. I use it just for reshaping the access closure. And I have a flame shaped diamond there if I do a pre-endo build-up. And I have a tree-hawk metal carbide burr for trephination of porcelain fused metal crowns. And zirconia crowns, this is what is coming more and more. I'm trephinating with diamond coated burrs, and down there, these are my 2 workhorses. I use it in the Sonic Flex handpeaks from Cavo. There are heatless diamonds that do not burn my dentin. I can use them perfectly dry. I do not need the water cooling in every case. They are not so cheap, yes, I have to admit it, but they have a very, very long standing time. So I use 1 tip approximately for half a year. This is very, very good. And if I think how many diamond coated ultrasonic burrs I used only once, because after this they burnt away or did damage to the tooth or something else, I don't like them anymore. I use this one. The next point, which I find is very, very important, is the glide path. You know, the glide path itself comes from the aviation. It describes the way of approaching, starting on landing to an airport. And in our case, I think we have to differentiate between access path and the glide path, because if I have a vital tooth and the canal is already catheterized from the coronal part to the apical part, with an established patency, the glide path in my eyes is only facilitating the use of rotary endodontics to be safe. Up to the size 10, 15, 20, there are many, many, many philosophical directions in this topic. Of course, there are also systems on the markets and people on the markets propagating the use of rotary files without doing glide path preparation. I disagree with them, because a glide path gives me initially valuable information. Suppose it's a narrow canal, it's a wide canal, are there multiplanar curvatures in this canal, or any obstacles in this canal? So I don't want to miss this information I get. Access path for me is, for example, in a very, very, very hard obliterated canal, and I do not have any chance to get a glide path first, because I have to overstep the obstacle, calcification or broken file, whatever. I have to do access path first, And if I have this SAF path done, then I can premiere the glide path. Imran Qasim held a perfect lecture about this very, very, very important topic in my eyes. And when you use the SAF, we need a very reliable glide path because the file itself is tapered, very tapered, and especially in the first 5 millimeters of the file, there is a taper included because this taper is responsible for the guidance of the SAF around any curvatures. And now I told in the early beginning of the lecture, the file rotates very, very light when it's not engaged to the canal walls. Yes, this is very, very important because only if the file rotates and if the conical half file down there in the 5 millimeters can catch the correct direction for the SAF to go around the curve, it will work like it works. If you jam this file into the canal without allowing it a rotation by disengaging the file, doing a pecking motion, you will create instantly ledges and zips, and it works very fast. On the other hand, you can use the SAF for smoothing out ledges if they are passed by hand files, creating a good reliable glide path. You can use the SAF in action to smooth out this ledge. That's working perfect. So you need a reliable glide path. If you don't have this glide path, you will end up in this manner. These were the first files. As I told, the file was introduced in 2011. There was a meeting. We were invited by Henry Schein and Redent, and we got some files to try out. And these are my files. We got about 15 files, and these were the first 4 ones. And we were 25 people in this room, and everyone's files looked like this. And the room was full with endodontists, partially with 15, 20 years experience. And even they managed to rip them off. Why? Because we treated the SAF like a normal rotary file. And it's everything, but it's not a rotary file. If you get the experience with the SAF, you're getting braver and braver, and you're trying things out with the SAF, which are not proposed by Reddit or by the official lecturers, but the file is more resistant to the breakage as we all think. If you don't have a reliable glide path, and if you don't abide the instructions and tips, tricks, and hints from us, you will end up in this. And we published these pictures in a German blog, and it is, wow, we knew it all. The SAF is crap. Now, these files were destroyed by misuse, nothing else. And there is no file system on this market and on this world which is really protected against misuse by the dentist. So if you use the SAF very correct and according to the instructions, it's a very safe file. This was one of the first files. In a clinical case, my access was bad. I had too much dentine overhang. I had not completed a correct funnel to exit the file in a correct way for minimum 5 millimeters and anything else. And I pushed the file. And what does the file do? It buckles. And when the file buckles and the mesh is distorted, by the time it will break, it will rip off the fins. It will rip off parts of the mechanical mesh. This is normal, and this looks like this. Gladly, these parts can be removed very easily with a micro debrider, micro opener, or just with a micro suction. You can just suck them out, because in 99% of the cases they swim up in your access opening without any problems. So we can remove them. Even when a part is jammed somewhere in a fin or whatever, you can pull it out. Sometimes it can be very, very difficult because these parts hook into the anatomy, and you pull on it and it's nighttime, it's elastic, You need a certain force to dislodge them again out of this anatomy, but it works perfectly. And if not, I will explain what to do. This is another case, an upper premolar Bertocci type 2 configuration. And you see there a little part of the SAF jammed into the conflation isthmus. And with a micro opener, it could be dislodged immediately. So what happens if you don't notice that a part of the SAF has broken and went down apically? Not much. Let be told, that is not so interesting as it that sound in the first time. This is 237. The bridge work was 1 year old. The tooth got hot with an acute purulent pulpitis. You see, that's a remarkable apical lesion on the distal root, and the distal root is very broad. We treated the tooth in a second two-visit approach with calcium hydroxide due to not stubble suppuration from the distal canal. And you see in the distal part a little puff, and you see another structure, and this is a part of the SAF file. A little part, it's nighttime, it's quite less radio opaque as everything else what we use. And this was the recall after 6 months. So basically it does not hinder anything down there. Of course, we know of the studies of Nair that every foreign body we introduce down in the periapical area will produce a foreign body reaction, and sometimes this is responsible for an uphold of the lesion. Another case that was also very interesting, 22 years old man, and his tooth was treated 6 years ago by his home dentist, and you see these canal structures are huge. I measured in the cone beam about ISO 140, so I even did not have any file for this canal, so I decided just to use the SAF file. Of course, I approved patency down there with a ISO 40 headstream file, but even this ISO 40 headstream file did not bind in the apical part, and the roots are very long. This tooth had a length mesially of 24 millimeters and distally of 23 millimeters. So I decided just to go in with the SAF file, 2 millimeters. It was 4 minutes per canal with the sodium hypochlorite, followed by 1 minute citric acid 50% activated with the SAF file, and again 1 minute sodium hypochlorite with the SAF, followed by 1 minute ultrasonic activation of the sodium hypochlorite. And the filling was done normally with AH plus and GP and squat technique, because I could not fit in a master cone in this extraordinary white canals. And you see also on the distal there is a little radio opaque structure. This is a part of the SAF for sure. And the left picture is immediately post-op, and the right picture is a recall after 6 months. And I find it very, very, very impressive how the SAF managed to shape and to disinfect these huge canals, because you see the lesion almost disappeared. The SAF part lies there, body inert. Nighttime is not dissolving into nickel and titanium. It stays inert. It does not dissolve in anything. And you see in the distal root exactly what I stated earlier. The SAF is capable to shape undercuts, and the canal is filled very, very well, very dense, and every irregularity we find in there. And I do not think that with a normal rotary instrumentation or hand instrumentation you will be able to get this result. Not a means of healing, but a means of cleaning and shaping this kind of anatomy. And these are the key points from this. You need a 100% apical access. Don't make, please, truss accesses a little holes in big fillings, especially not in molars. You need a 3 to 4 millimeter coronal funnel. This is mandatory for you being able to introduce the SAF clinically into the tooth. You need a glide path to minimum L420. Sometimes I go up to a 0425 and in extreme curved cases also to a 0430. There are different ways to skin a cat, like to say it in English, so I do not want to go deeper into the matter of preparation of an apical capture box or a conical stop or something else, or in which file system. These are topics handled by different lecturers and the EndoMasters. I tried, of course, as I heard of the reciprocation systems. Oh, cool. You just take a reciprocating file down there, you have a perfect glide path, you take the SAF in there and you're done. I can tell you one, it works very well with wave 1. The R25 from UDW does not work. It makes up the canal too big already, so the SAF is not able to do any work. Don't forget, SAF is only working when the file is compressed. The resilience of the SAF file, being made out of nitrile, is responsible for pressing the file in every irregularity and on the canal wall, and only when the file, due to its resilience, is pressed on the canal wall, it's grinding the canal wall and it's performing work. In the basic articles, it is described as the SAF enlarges the canal about 2 to 3 exercises. After 2 minutes, this mechanical work is mainly done, and the additional 2 minutes, resulting in 4 minutes, all working time with the SAF, is doing the disinfection, the irrigation, and fine grinding of the canal. It works also very well with a twisted file adaptive. The 0420 from TFA is a neat file. It's very flexible. It's very efficient and effective. I like it. But basically, it does not matter which file you use. The reliability of your access opening, the quality of your glide path, this is what matters. You may not push the file. If you push this file, you're lost because it rips instantly off. And what you need is 100% isolation. And I think I got this point with the isolation really good worked out. Don't use the SAF without any isolation. Never. This is my actual standard sequence, what I use for example, virgin, never touch tooth like pulpitis or necrotic case. I use the SX from ProTaper. I love it a lot. Basically because it has built-in AlterGates Gliddenburrs in one file. Please do not sink in the ProTaper to full length of 70 millimeters. You harvest a lot of dentin and you weaken the tooth unnecessarily. It is enough to open up a funnel and the orifice opening about 3 to 4 millimeters. Use it in an anti-curvature filing motion. You open up and it's straighten up the first canal curve, so it's perfect. After this I use a profile 1504 to working length, 2004 to working length. What I do then is insert an SAF file not attached to the handpiece into the canal and looking if it goes down to working length without any efforts. If not, I use a twisted file 0825 as final glide path file. And after this I use an SAF 1.5 millimeters or 2 millimeters. I prefer more and more the 2 millimeters because it gives me much more action in there. I do not have to open up the canal additionally a lot in contrast to the SAF 1.5. So I still find it a minimal invasive approach to the root canal. After I am done with the SAF file, I gauge the canal and I do my apical box or apical captured zone preparation. You can use everything you want. You can use a full rotary nitrile file, you can use hand files for it, just to prepare and stop for a root canal obturation. This is so much and a lot of taste which file system you use. I use personally the M2 I like them, but I also have from FKG bioray system and O2 tapers, just for creating an apical deep shape. Of course, you can do this with hand files also. I'm a lazy guy, so I use a mechanical preparation with full rotary niters because it's faster and it's easier for me. Yeah. Just a clinical example that the SAF even goes about severe curvatures. It's a tooth 1-4 that got necrotic and developed a fistula, and the referral told the patient is implant experienced, she loves these implants, and everything was well, but the referral told her if he extracts this tooth, no bone will left, and she will need a block augmentation with a bone block and a retarded implantation and everything, and the patient is 78, and the patient said no, she does not want it. Is there not any other possibility? And he told her, yes, an apical, but I have to cut into your gingiva, and there is a danger the implant gets a recession, so she didn't want this also. Then he said, okay, I know one crazy guy, I sent you there. And she presented to me with a fistula on the buccal side, no movement of this tooth, and there was a deep pocket in the distal area of about 6 millimeters, and I told her, wow, the curvature is harsh, but we're gonna try it. And you see, basically it was one big ribbon-shaped canal with a curvature of 90 degrees. This is a picture of the downpack. The canal, what you see centrally, this was an accessory canal which I preparated with ultrasonics underside. You see a little bit of AH plus in the fistula, and you see an accessory canal in the apical area. I was patent in this case all the time. This is the case after backfill. And this is the 6-month recall. Fistula disappeared 1 week after the treatment. She was painless at the same day. No more pain on chewing or something else. So you see, SAF was in there. And my apical master size was here, and M2 0430. And it worked out very well. And I am not sure how you will irrigate this parts of the canal with an ultrasonic. I am not sure. Another case, it's an upper molar. We look on the MB root with the 3 entrances, but these 3 entrances are artificial because I was there already with a ProTaper SX file, just for opening it up a little bit. And this is how the mesiobuccal root canal system present themselves after 4 minutes action of SIF. And you see the SIF followed the form of the canal perfectly. It looks really nice. The isthmus is open up. And this was a partially vital case. I mean, the apical part, I had still vital tissue, which was bleeding. After 4 minutes, the bleeding disappeared and stopped. So I suppose I have removed all of the vital tissue. And after having this state of the canals, I prepared an apical capture. So with the MT 0430, this was sufficient apical size. I did not remove any more dentin in the corneal part. So in my eyes, I did a good treatment with the SIF. Another case, also an upper molar, and you see this teardrop shape of the MB1. And why is this teardropped? Because there is an isthmus between MB2 and MB1, like it is usually there. And in this case, there were 2 separate POEs. But the isthmus was clean, really clean, after 4 minutes action of the SIF. If you remember your own cases using ultrasonic activated irrigation, this isthmus sometimes is not clear. Sometimes you still find debris in there, still some sort of tissue in there, and this is something what does not happen with the SAF file. Another case, also very interesting, you see 3 entrances, also created artificially by me. SX worked already from it, and this is how it looks after 4 minutes of SIF. And I'd like to point out the isthmus area again, you see, it's clean. I did not remove this overhang down there because I do not see the necessity to remove this dentin too much. And the SAF, due its compressibility, goes through these isthmus. It's a wonderful thing. I love it. A palatal case of our upper molar, and you see the shape of this palatal canal. And I wonder myself always when some rotary gurus tell me, oh, you just need this file system and you work it up. And then if I look at this shape, I doubt it really. This is the radiograph according to this case, and you see how irregular shaped these canals are. And this is something you have to get used to when you work with the SAF. Your cases start to look different. You see all these irregularities in the canals, and they fill up with sealer, with GP, and they don't look so perfect shaped, you know, like you use it with a ProTaper F3, for example. Of course, you see the cone fit, you see the apical preparation, but the rest looks fuzzy. I like this look in the meantime. In the first 3-4 months, I struggled a lot with this look because colleagues of mine told me, what did you change? Your cases look so different right now. Today I know, for me, in my eyes, in my situation, in my office, with my experience, this is a sign of quality. I love it. Another case, that was 3-6, the crown was 6 months old, and the tooth got hot, there was a deep caries, and the referral tried to cap it, but it did not work out. Apical master size for the measles M2 or for 35, for the distal it was 0630. But you see the irregularity and the apical part of the distal canal. And this was done by the SAF. Our filling was GP and AH+. It works well out. Sadly, I do not have any recall because the patient moved. I'm trying to get him since 6 months because I'm very curious what happened down there. But it worked. One another claim from Radiant is SAF retreatments. And this picture, what you see, happened once to me in 4 years by chance and with a lot of luck. The GP remnant from the apical part has hooked into the SAF, and I just pulled it out. But this is not happening on a regular basis in my office. I do not see this so often. Here also a look into the literature helps a little bit. There are different studies available. One is this. I find it very nice. It was the first one appearing. From Michael Solomonov, another one with micro-CT pictures. I find them very neat. They took a tooth and prepared it mechanically, filled it, and then retreated it. And the conclusion is still the SAF left debris in there. It's much less debris than you leave when you just retreat a tooth with a fully rotary system. But one point of the conclusion, that is mentioned in one only little sentence, well hidden, in the apical part, there where it is crucial to remove all this probably and potentially infected root filling material to enhance disinfection and everything, the SAF does not perform much better than full rotary. My own experience is it helps you to remove. When you remove the gross amount of gutta perca in the canal and you use the SAF, you can use it with solvents. I don't use it with solvents because solvents or solved gutta perca creates another problems or another possible problems. I don't like it. I just use sodium hypochlorite for 4 minutes with the SAF. And after this, I can peel off the remnants under side with the microscope and a micro debrider or micro opener much more easy from the canal walls. One more hassle what the SAF may have in retreatments is that the canal size and the canal wideness is already so big that there is no possibility for the SAF to engage the canal walls because it's simply too small. And we do not forget, it needs the resilience to do work on a canal wall, and if the canal is already too wide, it will not work. In the apical areas, it will exchange the irrigant down there, enhance a little bit, but mainly retreatments are and will stay mechanical handwork. And as stated before, the SAF helps to reduce the remnants, but it will not remove everything out of the canal. One actual study from a very keen SAF investing group in Turkey, and the highlight is highlighted. Nice play of words, but none of the techniques removed root filling remnants and smear layer completely. Additional use of SAF after the retreatment procedures may improve root canal cleanness in the coronal and middle thirds of all the roots. They also investigated this, and they found that the apical third is not really cleaner than using normal procedures. So I do not doubt any effect of the SAF and retreatments. It helps me to peel off the remnants of the canal wall, but it's not a magic wand. This is fact. And during retreatment, there are so many different other problems existing in there. We should focus more on them. You do not any harm if you use the SAF, but it will not have this ultra positive effect as we all may think. What I will not handle is the obturation after SAF. There are many ways to skin a cat. This is a perfect phrase to describe it. I myself, in my protocol, I prepare an apical capture zone. I'm old-minded in this case. It makes sense for me to get resistance form down there because I use warm vertical compaction techniques, and I need something to stop the hydraulics from spreading all over the apex into the surrounding tissues. So I use an M2 or everything what is convenient at this moment for a particular individual canal. There are many techniques with chloroform dipping techniques or solvent dipping techniques, or you can individualize your gutta percha cone. If you soften it up with a solvent, you put it on working length, let it there for 2-3 seconds, and pull it out again. You made an impression of your apical part. This is also applicable, but I don't like it because the solvent alters the gutta percha, and not the whole solvent is going to dissolve again, or vapor again from the gutta percha. So you have an altered gutta percha out there. I don't like it. What could be a promising approach in the future are the bioceramics and bioceramic sealer applied alone or with a single count technique. There are advantages and disadvantages, but it's quite too early to judge anything of it. In conclusion, I don't think that the obturation method itself will influence an outcome in any means. If there are bubbles, or as we know, all this bacteria penetration tests seems not to be very, very clear and telling us the truth what's going on there. And again, I have to point out that our disease model, our current disease model, does not explain everything, because every one of us knows this broken down teeth with an exposed root canal filling, and radiographically they show no apical change, no periapical lesion, and we all know cases with a mechanical and radiographic perfect root canal filling, which are showing huge APs or post-endodontic treatment disease, what's called much more better. I don't think that the obturation plays any major role in there, and I don't think I seal anything. And I have looked into SAM pictures of root canal fillings. I say how inhomogeneous they are and how many air bubbles are in there and voids. I don't think we should rely on a sealing of anything with something what does not seal. The game changes with the bioceramic sealer, which are stated to bind chemically on the root canal wall, something what should be proven still, because there is no little evidence available. I know out of personal communications with some of the researchers in this field there is something, but even they can't tell what there is. And if they look into a section of a complete root canal, also the bioceramics have bubbles and voids. So, but one thing have to be stated very clear: I do not propose a sloppy root filling. It may be a little puzzle stone, a little puzzle stone, but it fits into the whole picture. So if you do everything right, you have a good case assessment and you removed all the caries and the tooth is restorable, you disinfected, you shaped, you did everything to get the bacteria count as low as possible. You did a pre-endo build-up to secure the tooth. You should also do a very good root filling. It just fits into the whole picture. And I don't think I did all the efforts for 1.5 hours or multiple visits to get the tooth saved, to hamper everything with a bad root filling. Don't do it, please. But there is no recommendation from my side for one particular root filling method or materials. If you're good in this, what we are doing, and if you're comfortable with it, stick to it. Please do not change to warm vertical methods because all the gurus tell you, hey, it's so cool and it's the best. I'm doing the warm vertical because I'm used to it since 13 years now, and I'm very fast and it's very reliable in my hands. I'm also trying since 1 year bioceramics with single cone techniques, and I have to admit it does not really make a big difference. The only thing I'm looking for the bioceramics with single cones in particular cases. I do not like to have gutta percha as interface to my periapical tissues. So I use the bioceramics, but this is also not investigated in any part. So just an eminence-based opinion, nothing else. Now we are going to some clinical cases, just to show you how mighty the SAF is and how good it supports our normal mechanical, fully rotary preparation of the root canals. This is a tooth 1/7. It has 4 orifices and a pulpal chamber which were confluent in the apical end. And you see the irregular shapes of this canal system. So it is amazing how it looks. All the mesobuccals with the isthmus and distobuccal, all 4 orifices in ones. And they were shaped not only mechanically, they were also shaped with the SAF for 4 minutes. Not in each canal, I have to admit I was lazy because I inserted it only in the DB, in the P and in the MB1. MB2 I did not work out with the SAF because you just see an orifice there and 3 millimeters under this orifice, the palatal and the mesobuccal to merge together. So I did not see any sense to introduce the SAF in there for 4 minutes also. The isthmuses were clear and the apex was clear. I don't think you could clear this up with hand instrumentation or full rotary or with ultrasonics alone. Another interesting case was this 4/6. It was referred for retreatment due to periapical lesions which were slightly symptomatic. And what is appearing during the mesial root is a strange anatomical configuration which always arouses some mistrust in me. I did not have a cone beam from this tooth, but this is what I found. A classical 3-2 combination, 2 in the distal, 3 in the mesial, and you see the isthmus area, which is quite impressive how the SAF, together with ultrasonics irrigation, cleaned it out. And root filling was AH plus and GP. I don't use any other thing. You see a little void and 1 mesial canal. It's okay. This is directly post-op and this is 6 months recall, so it's healing. It's good. It's good for a patient. The symptoms disappeared 1 week after treatment and he likes it. Another case, that was 4/7, deep caries. You see the build-up in the distal is not so good as I'd like to, but this tooth is crowned now, so it's everything okay. And you look at post-operative disto-eccentric radiograph, you see exactly a mesh between the mesial and the distal. Even when the mesial root has 2 separate POEs, I see very often isthmuses or ladder steps like it's called in German, between the mesiolingual and mesiobuccal canal. To clean this, and staying quite conservative with your apical preparation sizes is not so easy. Of course, at the moment are different irrigation devices on the market, but in this particular case it was the SAF in my eyes which cleaned me the isthmus out. And it was a necrotic case, and of course I do not have any histological evaluation of this part of the root under the microscope, but I see it radiographically, and we all know there are isthmi and there are connections between the canals, and not every time we see them in the radiograph. So it has been clean enough to get some Guttapercha and sealer in there, and as we all know, Dedeus showed it in the SAF study, and flat oval canals, the areas that are not full of debris, of smear layer, that are not cleaned enough, will not get in touch with the root canal filling. There still stays a void. So for me, this letters or this additional anatomy is a very good sign I cleaned enough. Another 4-6, nothing spectacular. 3 canals with a little additional lateral canal on there. And as we see, the lateral periapical lesion lies center at the lateral canal. This is the 6 months recall, and also please understand and get me right, I do not aim for lateral canals. I do not see them so often here in Germany. Perhaps the population does not have them. I see always cases from friends of mine from Canada or from Portugal or from Spain or from Turkey or from South Africa. They have lots of additional anatomy. Or US, American-based endodontists also have them. I don't know which part of the population they are treating, where they are originating from, but here in Germany we don't see this often. And I do not think that the lateral canal is now deciding over the fate of the tooth, but when I look at this picture after 6 months, and I see that the periapical lesion centered over the lateral canal almost disappeared, and this is a very good healing for 6 months, I'm convinced it helped a little bit to disinfect this canal and to fill it up. And there is one publication which is investigating what the lateral canals are usually filled up with, and it's a mixture between root filling, debridement, remnants, bacterial mass, something else, but it was sufficient. The bone is healing, and the immune system is doing its work. One of the best and impressive cases for the SAF was this tooth, 2-6. It has different problems. It was accessed by the referral, and the referral perf the mesiobuccal root. There was a very complicated anatomy in there. We're going to see it on another picture. And you see the perforation aiming into central into the periapical lesion. It was the MB2. I managed to close the perforation with bioceramics and to engage the original MB2 canal with a double S-curve once again. And there was also the SAF used in this double S-curved canal to the apex, to the work length. This was not a problem. And again, if you have a good and reliable glide path, the use of the SAF is a piece of cake, to be sluttish. It works very reliable. This is the 6 months recall, already some healing evident, and what we see also is a little bit extraordinary anatomy in the distal buccal root. It's a very deep split, and I was not able to manage this deep split under the microscope because it's behind 2 curvatures, but the SAF did enough disinfection action, of course in conjunction with ultrasonic agitation, to clean up the deep split in the second canal, just for me being able to fill it up. As we see, bone is recovering, and this is the 1 year recall. Patient is symptom free, it does not hurt, the gums look good, there are no probing depth or something else. I'm optimistic that the tooth will heal and last a few years longer if she gets the crown done. Finally, I hope it. Another one, as a tooth 3-7, that was also pulpitic and assessed by the referral. I have one agreement with my referrals. If the teeth are vital and pulpitic, they just remove the crown pulpa and put a medication on it, litter mix for example, to get the patient out of the pain, and the patient is then referred. If possible, they do not go into the canals because they make more problems for me, or they break more up than they do something good for the patient in the first moment. And emergency treatment should be one more lectures, because I think there are so many myths around this topic in the world. It should be treated like a lecture. But this enables me to find a virgin root canal system where no one has poked into or blocked me something with debris or created a ledge or a zip or something else. And you see also here a big ladder, a big communication, a big isthmus between the both mesials and the distal. The next case, it was originally a 4-8 which was moved forward to mesial by orthodontics. This is a 47 years old female patient, and she wanted to keep this tooth at any price because she had the orthodontic bands for 5 years till everything was good. A little dysgnathia operation was also included. So I gave it a try. I have a preoperative cone beam. You have a hint that apically there is something complicated in there, but not as shown here on the final radiograph. It was a partial confluation between the mesiolingual, the mesiobuccal, and the distal canal. Typical wisdom teeth, they do what they want. In terms of anatomy, they are unpredictable. Everyone looks different. And it was disinfected with SAF, ultrasonic passive irrigation, a little bit of cone pumping, sodium hypochlorite, citric acid. Root filling was GP and AH+. And it works good out. This is the 6 months recall. It's almost healed. And I got some extra anatomy in there. It works. With the SAF. Predictable when you have a good glide path. Another case, tooth 2-6, the bridge work was 1 year old. The patient is 78, didn't want to lose the tooth because if this tooth goes lost, the bridge is also lost. You don't want to pull out these teeth under the bridge. For sure you will find a surgeon who does it, but he came to me and asked me if I see any chance for this tooth. She wants to rescue this tooth by any means. Okay, let's give it a try. This is directly post-operative. You see also complicated anatomy, very curvy mesiobuccal canals, a confluation with a distal buccal canal, and something more. SAF went there, and it was the SAF 2 millimeters. Root filling was GP AH+. It worked all out. This is recall 1 year, and this is recall 3 years. So the SAF makes it possible to me in my hands, in my office, and in my surrounding. This is always very important to tell because no office in this world is similar to another one. And as we know, dentistry is very, very strong influenced by our manual skills and our mindset. So I know a lot of people much better than me performing things where I stand at the side and think, wow, how did he manage this? Fantastic. But the SAF, after 4 years, I can say, applies a very, very safe disinfecting shaping tool, which help us to achieve very good results in our daily work without being a fancy specialist with 1 million scopes and whatever. It is very, very suited for a general practitioner in my eyes. Because we specialists, we always have our own irrigation protocols and our secret devices to activate irrigation and whatever else. But a GP can't afford to specialize in endodontics. He has many patients to treat on a day. And I think with the current protocol, the SAF enhances the disinfection capabilities in a GP office by 1000%. You don't have to deal with syringes, with needles, with tips, with ultrasonics. You can use the SAF, the protocol is clear, 4 minutes in a canal. You can activate the solutions with it, you can exchange the solutions with it. You can adapt it to almost every existing office equipment, of motors, of handpieces, and it works. And if you are by the few rules we have elaborated now in the last 1.5 hours, you will be able to do it safely for you and safely for your patient. I know I did not touch 2 or 3 more questions because I don't see any relevance in it. There is one study appeared who is talking about overpression and extrusion of sodium hypochlorite and debris, and the SAF extrudes more sodium hypochlorite and extrudes more debris compared to, I think, a reciprocal in a wave 1. I have to tell you, if I would have this type of extrusions of material over the apex in patients, I would be a master in dealing with flare-ups. And I'm not. I'm doing a lot of endodontic treatments over a year, and I see rarely, about 2 to 3 times a year, a flare-up. And if I see this, it was always my own fault, because I forced the file too fast into the apex, or was sloppy in doing the retreatment, not removing the gross root filling material before going to the apex, and so on. It was my manual faults. I can tell you that no patient treated with the SAF developed an apical flare-up or extensive postoperative pain due to extrusion of something. I do not encounter this problem in my office. Also, the length fixation or length measurement with the SAF due to oscillation of 0.4 millimeters. One of the best questions is, where do you set your length? I set the length on the file. 0.4 millimeters is not that much. The file is that flexible that when you get to your apical working point where you did your glide path, it will not go over the apex. And if you try it in an extracted tooth, following the recommendations, you will not be able to push the SAF over the apex intentionally, because if you push too much, it buckles up. It does not go further down. So basically, it's very proof and very safe system. I like it very lot. Of course, you can rip it off. Of course, you can break it. But remember my words, there is no system in this world which is really safe and really proof. Because as long as no machine which is programmed is using this tools, we are relying on our subjective set of skills and feelings and experiences. And do not forget, every case is different and every case is individual. So as long as we do not have the standard patient with a standard tooth, with a standard root canal, we need different tools and different ways to assess one case. The SAF itself is not a magic wand. When it's not embedded into an overall prosthodontic or restorative concept or an office concept, you will not help anybody with the use of the SAF. It costs also money, it costs effort, there's a cost for the patient. They have to be worth for it. And this is a premolar I treated, and I saw the patient 3 years later, and he presented with this restoration, and I was like, wow, what's this? And he told me, yes, the referral told me, Von Stetten is crazy, you don't need a crown on there, we just make a composite filling. And this hurts me really in my deep, because the patient paid a lot of money for this treatment. I put a lot of efforts in this treatment, and this is the outcome, restoration. And this is one of the cases, I told the patient also, if this case gonna fail, for 80%, we can blame it on your restorative work you got incorporated in there. And so, if you're working on a referral base, talk to your referrals, because the restoration is for sure also as important as the disinfection or root canal filling or the cone beam or electronic length measurement and something else. So please do not forget, endodontics is always one puzzle piece of the whole. A good endodontics and a good endodontic treatment is always lost without the proper restoration or prosto, or without a proper perio or a proper treatment planning. Summarized, the take-home message: you need a 100% isolation, you need a 100% access, especially in the beginning. There is a very steep learning curve with the SAF. Do not mess up the SAF with a fully rotary instrumentation. It has nothing in common, and this is something we have to learn and have to experience. You need a 100% glide path. If the glide path is not 100% unreliable, you will not have any success. You will only have failures with the SAF. You need patience, for sure, because it's a learning process, it's a learning curve, and you need training. Get a course for the SAF. It's provided in many countries. In some countries it's mandatory before the sale or the purchase of the SAF to get one training with one experienced trainer, lecturer. And this is not a marketing issue. In fact, is it very important to get the first feeling and to be guided by an experienced person to this new system, because it's so new and it is so uncommon to our normal rotary preparation, what we are used to. It is always very wise to benefit from errors other than did, and if they are so polite and are talking about the errors and helping you to improve your daily work, this is for sure worth a lot. I love the SAF. It is a vital pillar of my protocol. It did not disappoint me. It makes what it should. It disinfects and it shapes canals. It helps me in my daily work, and for this I spent a lot of money for much worthless things in my life. But the SAF, for sure, was a 100% regained investment. So, thank you very much for your attention in my lecture. I hope you enjoyed it a little bit. It helped you to grasp what the SAF is, what the concept behind the SAF is, what the benefits are, what the SAF cannot do, and what the SAF for sure does not deliver. I hope you will enjoy the further Congress, as I will, and see you soon.